In this video, we're going to look at the XIRR function in XLeratorDB for SQL Server 2008. In order to demonstrate this function, I've created a table called the fund table, and it contains the following columnar information: the name of the fund, the name of the manager, the client code, the amount of the cash flow, and the date of the cash flow. As you can see, there's no keys and there's no indexes on this table, so the table hasn't been optimized in any way. The first thing I'd like to do is simply show you how much data we're dealing with. So we're going to count the number of rows in the table. We see that it's 563,145 rows. Now the XIRR function is really very simple to use as an aggregate function in SQL Server 2008. We call XIRR with the amount of the cash flow, the date of the cash flow, and some provision for a guess if you'd like to supply one. If not, simply enter null, or enter a value between greater than -1 and less than 1, and the function will use it as a starting point. In this particular example, we're going to look at the XIRR values by client code, manager name, and fund name. Okay, and since this is an aggregate function, we're going to need to group by that information. And we're going to do the calculation right here on all 563,000 rows on my 32-bit laptop, and we should see results in less than 2 seconds. We got our first result, in 4 seconds to get all 4,000 client calculations returned. And we can see that we've ordered by client code, that with this client had an IRR of 6.5%, this client had an IRR of 11.6%, this client had an IRR of 9%, this client had an IRR of 21.6%. Very powerful, very straightforward, very fast. So what if we wanted to say look at the performances of the manager, and we thought that XIRR was appropriate a tool to do that? Well, we can use exactly the same calling structure, except now we're simply going to select the name of the fund and the name of the manager, and we're going to group by that information. And again, we're taking 563,000 rows of data, and we're going to return a result, that time in about 2 seconds, that shows the 9 fund managers and how they did across all of their accounts, across all the cash flows for each of those accounts. If we wanted to do the same type of calculation for the fund, irrespective of manager or client, we could simply select the name of the fund. We group by that name. We're going to order by the fund name, and again, using all 563,000 rows of data, we get the performance by fund. And we have 3 funds. They're called Excelsior 1, Excelsior 2, Excelsior 3, and they each performed about 11% over the life of the funds, because of course the XIRR function is bound by the first cash flow date and the last cash flow date in the group upon which it's performing the calculation. I hope that this has been helpful, and I hope that you're able to use XIRR with SQL Server 2008 successfully in your environment.